Welcome to the Internet Files. Today we revisit one of America's most enduring mysteries, the disappearance of the Sodder children on Christmas Eve, 1945. A house destroyed, 5 children missing, no bodies, no remains, no closure. Was it a tragic accident? A targeted attack? A kidnapping carried out under the cover of a fire? Or something even darker? Let's dive into the facts, the evidence, the theories, and the truths that history couldn't bury. Before the tragedy, the Sodders were known as a hard-working, respectable immigrant family. George Sodder was born in Tula, Sardinia. He immigrated to the U.S. at age 13, never discussing why he left Italy, a silence that would later feed speculation about his past. Jenny Cipriani, the mother, was also an Italian immigrant. She came from a closely bonded family and was known for her warmth, kindness, and fierce protection of her children. Together, George and Jenny built a family of 10 children, known for their politeness, strong work ethic, and involvement in the local community. John, 23 years old, serious and reserved, helped George with the family trucking business. Joe, 21 years old, serving overseas in World War II during the incident. Marion, 17 years old, kind, responsible, worked at a local 5 and dime store. George Jr., 16 years old, strong-willed, worked alongside his father hauling coal. Morris, 14 years old, quiet, gentle, especially close to his little sisters. Martha, 12 years old, creative and always drawing, loved helping Jenny cook. Louis, 9 years old, energetic, mischievous, always climbing trees and exploring. Jenny, 8 years old, sweet and affectionate, adored by all siblings. Betty, 5 years old, the baby among the older kids, always followed her sisters around. Sylvia, 2 years old, the youngest survivor, she later became the guardian of the family's story. This was not a chaotic household, it was structured, loving, and deeply connected. Which makes the events of that night even more devastating. George was successful, running a trucking company that hauled coal. That success brought admiration, but also resentment. More importantly, George was outspoken about his hatred for Mussolini. In a community with many Italian immigrants, some of whom still supported the dictator, his views created tension. And not just mild disagreements. Real hostility. One man warned George that speaking out would lead to trouble. Another salesman directly threatened him, saying the family would pay for insulting Mussolini. The Sodders didn't believe these threats would escalate. But after Christmas Eve, they would never forget them. The Sodder home was full of laughter that night. Jenny prepared a special dinner, and the younger children were allowed to stay up later than usual. Marion, the eldest sister, had brought home gifts for her little siblings, a rare treat during the war years. The children played until Jenny gently sent the youngest 5 to bed in the attic. They went upstairs giggling, excited for Christmas morning. It was the last innocent moment the family ever shared. At around 1 a.m., Jenny woke to a strange sound on the roof. Not wood cracking, not debris falling, something heavy, striking, then rolling. Minutes later, the smell of smoke filled the air. The fire started near the fuse box, a fuse box that had been inspected and certified safe just 2 months earlier. As smoke filled the home, George and Jenny rushed to rescue their children. But every rescue method failed as if someone had planned it that way. A missing ladder. The ladder always kept beside the house had vanished, later found discarded in a ravine. Disabled trucks. George's 2 work trucks, working perfectly the day before, suddenly wouldn't start. Cut phone line. A repairman later confirmed the wire had been cut manually. This wasn't fate. This wasn't coincidence. This was sabotage. The fire destroyed the house, but the morning after, the biggest mystery emerged. There were no bodies, not bone fragments, not teeth, nothing. And this wasn't speculation, it's scientific fact. House fires rarely exceed 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit. Bones require 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit plus sustained heat to disappear. Teeth are among the hardest substances in the human body. Yet household appliances survived. Metal survived. Even parts of the roof survived. But 5 children vanished without a trace. Fire experts said it bluntly. This is impossible. More disturbing details surfaced. An incendiary device found in the yard. Exactly the type used in wartime to start fires quickly. A man watching the Sodder children days before. He sat in a car on Route 16 for several days, observing the children, claiming he was working on insurance enrollment. He never returned. A woman who saw a man steal the Sodder's ladder. She reported seeing a truck parked on the highway with men taking something long and wooden. She only realized it was the ladder after the fire. Multiple people reported sightings of the Sodder children after the fire. A woman at a Charleston hotel. She said, "The children matched the Sodders exactly. They arrived with two Italian-speaking adults. The adults appeared hostile and protective. She felt she was witnessing something wrong." A bus driver passing through Fayetteville. He saw what he believed were the 5 children being forced into a car during the fire. A woman in a diner in North Carolina. She reported that the children were quiet, looking down, with 2 well-dressed men, who refused to let the waitress speak to them. Every sighting pointed to the same conclusion. The children didn't die, they were taken. In 1967, over 2 decades after the tragedy, Jenny received a photograph. A young man in his 20s. A man who looked almost exactly like Louis, the Sodder's 9-year-old son who vanished in the fire. On the back was a message.
Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, ill boys, A90132 or 35.
The Sodders hired a private investigator to trace the letter. He took the case. He took the photograph. He left Fayetteville, and no one ever saw him again. Not the police, not the Sodders, not his agency. He vanished like the children. The children were kidnapped by an anti-Mussolini group. Given George's vocal criticism of the dictator, local Italian loyalists may have retaliated. This would explain the threats, the sabotage, the coordinated elements, the children being seen with Italian-speaking adults. The mafia connection. Evidence suggests Italian crime groups operated in West Virginia during this period. A kidnapping would punish George, supply children to trafficking networks, force silence, an organized human trafficking ring. This explains the speed of the fire, the missing bodies, the sightings in multiple states, adults guarding the children. The official accident theory. This is the weakest theory, contradicted by forensic science, witnesses, and logic. Even the chief investigator later admitted he could have been wrong. George and Jenny refused to bury empty graves. They kept the children's rooms exactly as they were for decades. Their billboard, featuring the faces of the 5 missing children, became a local landmark for 40 years and a symbol of hope, grief, and unanswered questions. When George died in 1968, he was still searching. When Jenny died in 1989, she was still waiting. The surviving Sodder children dedicated their lives to the truth, especially Sylvia, the baby who survived the blaze. She became the final keeper of the family's secrets. The Sodder case is disturbing because every piece of evidence points to one truth. This was not a fire. It was a plan, a coordinated operation, and a complete disappearance. 5 children didn't vanish into flames, they vanished into thin air. Nearly 80 years later, the mystery remains unresolved. Were the Sodder children taken? Are they alive somewhere? Did someone silence the truth? Or was this a political message gone horribly too far? The answers burned with the house, and someone made sure of it. This is the Internet Files. And remember, every mystery has a story, but not always an answer.